Sonic Mania understands what makes classic Sonic great and executes it as well, if not better, than it ever has been. For Sonic fans or newcomers, this will be your game of the year, but for those who have moved on, this game feels fairly regressive in a lot of ways. Part 1. Sonic Mania is wonderful and great in all the ways! Sonic Mania is a labor of love, clearly made by someone who deeply appreciates the Blue Boy. The game's original soundtrack is inspired and evocative. The opening animation music, titled Friends, legitimately makes me feel nostalgic for a time which I wasn't even alive for. Uplifting and optimistic, this track portrays a timeline in which Sonic is the best guy, your best friend, and he still has heights yet to ascend. The main menu and file select tracks are dreamlike and carefree, making the idea of Sonic feel effortless, like, yeah, we know what we're doing, of course. Come on, let's go to adventure. It'll be great. In-game compositions such as Studiopolis, mid-boss, and main boss are packed with style. Boss themes adequately communicate the generic "this is a boss" feeling, while spinning their discs with pizzazz, making them distinct and entertaining. Studiopolis is simply a banger. It's groovy, it's sassy, it's everything you think Sonic is, and it's surprising that Sonic has never been this yet, when it fits so naturally. Press Garden is atmospheric and tonal, yet rooted in electronica, simultaneously matching its oriental setting and making me want to dance. It's a good. Sonic soundtracks have always been great, and Mania is no exception, filled with highlights and dripping with personality, abscondent of Sonic's cold corporate status. The visual aesthetic of Sonic Mania is so good that it makes the 90s look more saturated, rich, and beautiful than it actually was. Maybe you can tell by my avatar that I'm really into this aesthetic. Sonic himself is tinted so right, with a blue so vibrant, warm, and resonant that I love him. Again. Certain classic acts, such as Hydro City, are touched up visually to make them both pop and encapsulate my eyeballs. Look at the deep purples and pinks lining the background, contrasting with the highlighted orangish bricks and teals of the walls. This image is absolutely beautiful. The wider color range of modern technology, for the most part, is utilized well, and it's the best thing. As good as some of the old levels look, the new zones look even better. Studiopolis' use of complementary colors blue and orange make it pop, yet it looks so smooth. These wall textures aren't over-designed, over-detailed, or garish. I can't even describe it, man. It has charisma. This has identity. This has charm. I am thoroughly charmed by this color palette. Note how the canyons in Mirage Saloon dip into the pink range, and how the cacti are highlighted with purple. These borderline unnatural colors paradoxically inject a life all its own into the world. Look at just fucking, oh my god, the zone is so fucking beautiful, I love it. The rings look fuller and more solid than ever before, with the particular yellow they chose. The border and drop shadow on score time rings text make them fit into the image without distracting from the diegetic picture. It looks so right.
The snozberries taste like snozberries.
Guys, the menus feel good. Fast, responsive, bold, and stylish, and as we all know, if the menus feel good, the game feels good. Level transitions in this game are the most pleasant and good-looking thing I have ever seen. Look at those colors fly by. I have an irrational attachment to this aesthetic right here. Right here. There it is. I love it so much. With colors like these, Sonic Mania creates an aesthetic all its own, and I am all about this aesthetic. The amount of polish and animations this game gives is unreal and will not go unappreciated. The simple act of being a Sonic game with a stable, unbroken 60 frames per second is a godsend, something which couldn't be done with any Genesis Sonic outside of emulation. That's 30 or 60, I don't know, frames of animation for each action performed. Sonic runs more smoothly, jumps smoothly, pushes objects more expressively, and spills rings like the devil fucking Dickens. Capsules explode with a lingering puff of smoke, giving a lasting sense of life to the interaction. Honestly, it's borderline distracting with the violent orange tint of the explosion, but that's just how good it feels to simply break a capsule in this game. There's no Genesis stiffness in these animations. Water and oil animate much more smoothly, giving them greater texture and, in the water's case, greater pleasure to splash into and out of. Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles have unique animations for spinning on a bar stool, miniature versions of themselves, getting caught in bubbles, being frozen in ice, standing on a ledge, and more. They thought of that, and they animated it. Something as silly as standing on a bar stool didn't need an animation, but the fact that it's there reflects the effort and extra miles run. The aesthetic of a 1920s mute, wide-eyed cartoon characters acting and reacting to the environment surrounding them is spot on. Sonic's personality is on point. He is expressive and cheeky, but he is often caught off guard in this world. He is not aloof, not above what is happening, but he is determined to get the job done. This is what many fans have imagined and dreamed Sonic was and would return to be, and here he is. And the pretty colors flying everywhere, you know how pretty it looks when the DNA chemicals fly around Sonic and all that. You know how well the attention to detail is when walking on a Studiopolis van tilts it to that side. You know you've got something good when you see this giant gun waving up and down. Reach for the skies! The attention to detail in Sonic Mania drives home just how much heart this title sports. Corners were not cut in the animation department, and it shows. When I look at and listen to Sonic Mania, I think, fuck yes. Sonic Mania knows what a good Sonic game is, and what a good Sonic game does. A good Sonic game features responsive movement mechanics, and its levels are debatably filled with stuff which are both entertaining and debatably fun to interact with, along with being aesthetically fitting to its environment and pleasing to look at. Sonic Mania is filled with stuff to bounce off of, fly through, shoot up from, or even stop one's tracks and be charmed by. And that's a good. Fancy boats in Hydro City thankfully allow avoidance of underwater navigation and look cool. Transparent chutes in Chemical Plant allow for alternate paths and are neat. The spring mazes in Stardust Speedway are an incredibly natural fit for Sonic's moveset and playstyle, dazzling and confusing new players while providing fast access to the experienced. The foreground background gimmick was cool and made me stop and think to get to where I wanted to go. These objects, toys, and mechanics make up what is a traditional, textbook good Sonic game. Sonic Mania thankfully evolves its instrument set for its soundtrack and doesn't fall back too often on the grimy, harsh instruments of the Sega Genesis sound chip. For the soundtrack. Oldies such as Hydro City, Oil Ocean, and Chemical Plant sound utterly familiar, but a few touches make them grind against my ears a little bit less. Plus their Act 2's got the freedom to remix the content into something new sometimes, and that's good. Sonic Mania features many surface-level familiarities to past titles, which will please longtime fans with the age-old party trick of
I know what that is!
Sonic the Fighter's characters are displayed on wanted posters in Mirage Saloon only to be imitated by the boss robot, not only alludes to the past, but tells its own story. Reused classic levels will often start completely identical in layout to their original forms before branching out and remixing rampantly. A lot of levels feature allusions to other levels and games, creating an anachronistic feel, such as Sonic 2 Hilltop Dinosaurs and Lava Reef, or the switch suppression gimmick from Studiopolis taking place in Oil Ocean. The content feels the most fresh when it is expanded upon and transformed into a new experience. If you are a longtime Sonic fan, Sonic Mania will be your game of the year, because Sonic Mania, through its visual design, stellar animation, and attention to detail, excels perhaps even past the giants whose shoulders it stands on. But if you're not a fan of what classic Sonic is, if that doesn't interest you, you won't find nearly as much appeal once you pick up the controller. Part 2, Nostalgia Pandering, the Bad Kind, or Because Freedom Planet Exists. Content from past Sonic games is reused to a ridiculous degree, and Mania can at times feel very regressive. Green Hill Zone and Chemical Plant back-to-back make a very poor introduction, and is a blunder on a philosophical level. This is what big brand corporations do to evoke nostalgia in its audience.
I clapped because I know Star Wars!
Is a cheap, exploitative trick, stimulating only on the basic level. Sonic isn't good because of the imagery of Green Hill Zone, it's good because of the sum of its parts, but presenting the audiovisual aesthetic of Green Hill Zone creates a familiarity in 30-year-olds which drives them to buy children's products. Sonic 1 is not the best Sonic game. The placement of Green Hill Zone in Sonic Mania inherently misses the point of what makes classic Sonic great. Do you like Green Hill Zone? Well, how would you like to play Green Hill Zone again? And again, 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 and again.
Wow!
The act of including Chemical Plant is blatant nostalgia pandering. I am not a fan of Genesis Sonic. I don't care for these levels. I don't want to play them again. Too bad more than half the game's assets are recycled aesthetically and mechanically, right? Remember how I said how much richer Hydro City looks? Too bad Lava Reef looks exactly the same texture for texture. Lava Reef Zone has this strange magical ability which makes every Sonic fan in a 5-mile radius achieve instant orgasm, but again, I am not a Sonic fan. In the words of the Zoo Gok, Sonic Mania has heavy use of hatching and a wide maximum color range with a small amount of individual colors on screen at one time, whereas the reused assets are practically the opposite. Sonic Mania also has a greater emphasis on environmental lighting, assumedly due to a smoother development period. The reused assets were originally designed with not looking out of place in any stage in mind, rather than looking expressly colored to reflect the intended stage. So quoteth the Zoo Gok. Sonic's bubbly rose-tinted sprite honestly looks a bit out of place with these harsh orange and white rock sprites. This is merely okay content. I have experienced this before, and I have experienced better. Okay, sound effects here. Sonic Mania excels when it's providing original content, brand new aesthetics which razzle and dazzle every time, but 70% of the game's sound bites are reused from over 20 years ago, and that is a big problem to me. These sound bites were designed for and generated by this old archaic machine called the Sega Genesis. The Sega Genesis' sound chip is bad. It's garish. It's harsh on the ears. It grates. So maybe, just maybe, sounds generated from that system could be better. By the nature of the evolution of technology and the increased intellectual and artistic awareness of our information-based society, you'd think we'd be able to think of something better than 20-year-old sound bites. Not to say that they aren't good, but maybe it could be better. Sonic's basic sound effects, recycled as they are, don't communicate their function in a kinetic fashion. The ring collecting sound distracts from the atmospheric jams of the soundtrack. The ring loss sound upon taking a hit we connote to failure purely by association. We associate the ring loss sound to failure because that's what it does. But that sound has zero kinesis to it. Enemies don't feel powerful or weighty when the sound they make when they hit me is a universal. This is a meme sound. This sound is what people have been using for collision sounds for skits since the mid-2000s for humor. So maybe there's a better sound. This jumping sound doesn't make me feel quick on my feet, doesn't make me feel acrobatic or nimble. It's simply a video game sound. A video game can feel better than this. There are video games out there which feel better than this. I feel like a platformer all about running and jumping would feel better if collision sounds weren't shackled to be this and instead evoked feeling. Honestly, despite Springs being somewhat underpowered without the Cyclone exploit, Freedom Planet Springs felt punchier than this. I'm really not a fan of Genesis crumbling, bumping, and rock shifting sounds. It feels like, yeah, I get it, you really like the Genesis games. I don't. What else you got? Sound design has evolved since 1994. It really has, guys. It's adequate, but we can do better than this. Do you guys like playing the same boss? Again? I mean, I've never gotten to this boss because I've never gotten past Marble Zone in my entire life because Sonic 1 sucks, even though that's the one which gets remade for the Game Boy Advance on Sonic's 15th anniversary. Anyway, you guys have all played this. Do you guys like the exact same boss again? Shuffling the pillar movement to a more continuous danger in the second half of the fight does not constitute original content. It feels rudimentary and not particularly stimulating. It's silly. Yeah, and yeah, a cartoon platformer should be silly, but you know what? It should feel like fucking something. Bottomless pits and crusher traps have a lot of potential to fucking suck, particularly in a Sonic game, which, if you run out of lives, pushes you back to the beginning of Act 1, or worse, to the beginning of the game. Suddenly, and without warning, taking away the life of my beloved avatar only to warp me back to the checkpoint with a finger waggle and do it right this time, feels like shit. Insta-kill death traps have potential to be more than just an interruption. Insta-kill death traps can create stakes. They can generate excitement and make your heart race, but it takes a certain level of conveyance and moderation to do this. Sonic Mania uses crusher traps indiscriminately. Players can die instantly for no reason and it feels like shit. Sometimes it's well conveyed. In Garden Zone, it's conveyed really well. I'm very forgiving. This may sound fucking retarded, but even player failure can complement a game experience. Even player failure can feel right in a way. In Dark Souls, death feels right because the player's non-importance is reinforced by the enemies losing interest after the player dies. The loss of souls hopefully drives players to let go of their belongings and come to terms with loss, come to terms with their own death. The slow, committed combat conveys exactly what the player did wrong, and the pathetic moan they make when they get hit contributes to its themes. Death. It feels right in Dark Souls. Modern platformers have fixed instant death. Super Meat Boy turns player death into a spectacle of blood sport, even allowing future attempts to splish-splash on the fluids of one past failure. Death feels right in Super Meat Boy because mistakes are clear, players know what they did wrong, and they instantly respawn to try again. And when a player finally succeeds in beating a level, they get an immensely satisfying replay of every attempt playing at the same time until only the victorious triumphs. Dust Force, the greatest 2D platformer of all time, integrates death fluidly with instant response and no music interruption, allowing the greatest game soundtrack of all time to soothe players into a trance-like state of focused practice. It also gives generous checkpoints to allow players to practice particular sections without harsh punishment, but the integration of its ranking system means players must complete levels flawlessly to reach true victory. Freedom Planet's health system and moveset allow players to really know what they're doing wrong when they kick the bucket, so when they come back faster, sharper, and knowing what to look out for, they're good. Mastery of Freedom Planet's intense bosses is all but certain to the determined, and even the toughest foe becomes your bitch, and there's no better feeling. Also, the insta-kill death traps in Freedom Planet are all properly conveyed in a safe and controlled environment, for the most part even integrated into the story, and it's fucking good. So why does dying in Sonic 2017 feel so clumsy? While your special stage is still a thing, they seem to crop up at checkpoints far too often, meaning completionist players, driven to unlock the fabled knock-knock Knuckles and Knuckles mode, are tormented with this constant interruption. Stopping the main game to play a lengthy, committed minigame is a huge flow stopper. Yes, it's optional, but it's incentivized, meaning players feel obligated to do it, and that sucks. It sucks that Sonic Mania recycles 3 and Knuckles' Blue Sphere to the letter. We really didn't need Blue Spheres again. We didn't. Blue Sphere is the best Sonic special stage sans Mania UFO, but that's not saying much. Blue Sphere was taken to its logical extreme with its standalone, featuring millions of variant stages. Millions! There is no way on this big blue Earth that Blue Sphere had anywhere else to go mechanically. It is simply the same thing again, and I am not a fan. Sonic Mania revels in recycling entire level chunks from old titles, and for anyone who finds Sonic 3 and Knuckles as anything less than a 9 out of 10, this is a giant fucking waste of time. Yes, each oldie remixes, expands, or surprises by the end of Act 2, it's just too bad that I had to spend so much time playing the same level again to get there. You know what, I'm grateful that Flying Battery's awkward, slow-moving crusher platforms were removed, or at least I didn't see them on my main route, but I didn't have much fun playing magnets and getting pop-shotted by this gosh dang robot every single time. It is very easy to fall into the pit of calling out recycled content and calling Sega a bunch of phony corporate businessmen who are only in gaming to sell a product and make money, but there's a certain mindset which makes this okay. Consider Sonic's track record. Consider how much Sega has driven Sonic into the ground with poor title after poor title after poor title, spin-offs, reboots, and recycled content until Sonic loses all meaning and credibility and yet still has ground to sink. Maybe a simple, simply competent Sonic game is all we can reasonably expect from Sega. Maybe a glorified, expanded, best-case scenario ROM hack of Sonic 3 and Knuckles actually exceeds Sonic's bedrock level expectations. If you're okay with a mechanically familiar, ultimately similar experience from Sonic Mania, then you will enjoy this very much, and you're a happy camper. You have won. You are living the good life. But if you left Sonic decades ago for better platformers and never looked back, Mania might only achieve pretty good status in your book. Because Freedom Planet exists, Sonic Mania feels so basic to play. Sonic bounces around everything with at times no control from the player at all, no feeling of intentionality, simply a roller coaster to ride. Sonic has very few functions: run, jump, spin. Sonic has no defensive options, and running into an enemy causes him to stop in his tracks and take damage. Sonic often stands on slow-moving platforms waiting for them to move just right to jump to the next one, and because of how the rest of the game works around these platforms, this is completely dull. Doesn't that feel pretty bare bones in 2017? Can't we do better than this? Can't we have an option for Super Sonic's theme to not interrupt the level music? Can't we have an option for the music not to reset every time we die to keep up this sacred flow I've been told so much about? Sonic Mania relies heavily on springs, boosters, and bouncers to send Sonic flying up, down, all the fucking place. On some level, that's what Sonic is, and that's what Sonic does. But maybe I don't like what Sonic is. I am not in as much control of Sonic as I would like to be in this type of action platformer game. Sonic is nigh powerless to steep slopes. Overlapping platforms and roads tell players to fuck off, and I constantly see little goodies and secrets hidden next to boost panel speedways, giving players a split seconds to realize that they missed something before a one-sided platform pops in and says, "You blew it!" Freedom Planet offers a greater degree of character control. Freedom Planet features more movement options for offense, defense, and mobility. Freedom Planet features intense, player-intensive boss fights, which get the blood flowing and challenge in a fair and fast-paced manner, which makes up for its forgiving, frequent checkpoints. Sonic Mania's final boss is the tried and true, wait for me to make myself vulnerable and then attack me a little bit boss, which I find, as I've said in a past video, trite, tedious, and the most boring thing on the planet. But that's all Sonic can do with his basic-ass moveset. Freedom Planet started out as a Sonic fan game, but by removing its immediate association with the franchise, it allowed itself to expand on its ideas and create something wholly new, and it lives better for it. Sonic Mania is just, you run into enemies, you run forward, and you get hit by an enemy! That's a meme, by the way. That's a joke. I'm memeing you right now. But really, enemies damaging you on collision is so unbelievably frustrating in this game. It is frustrating. Half the enemies in the game have some sort of hurtbox or invincibility phase which stops you even if you're spinning. So what's the fucking point of spinning? Sonic feels so weak and purposeless and powerless. He feels basic and bouncy and by the numbers on a mechanical level, and I've played better. Sonic Mania explicitly chokes the player with enemies on at least one occasion, and it feels bad, man. What am I gonna do? Stop running fast, waiting for the enemy's hurtbox invincibility cycle to go away? Do you think I'm the kind of guy to wait for an enemy to make itself vulnerable? Fuck that, I have a spin dash. Let's just spin dash into him really quickly and see if we get lucky. Nope. Fuck me. I'm like, fucking, get good, Steeb. You think I haven't done my fucking research? You think I haven't beaten Sonic 3 and Knuckles 3 times? You think the controls of the game would catch on by the 3rd, 4th, 5th playthrough? It hasn't yet. Maybe if I learn to speedrun a Sonic game, it'll become the best game ever and it'll become amazing, but I haven't done that yet. So when I play a Sonic game, I run into shit, and it sucks. What I'm trying to say is, I think that Sonic could possibly be more than this, on a mechanical level. Sonic Mania is a spectacular game. Sonic Mania takes a lot of toy pieces that we've already played with and shuffles them a little bit, but how many times can you shuffle the same playing pieces before the pieces themselves get old? It's certainly okay this time, but I think that Christian Whitehead and the gang, if they wish to continue developing games and are asking for criticism, which they are not asking for criticism, obviously, should branch out, perhaps with a new IP, which can do more or different things, because if something as mechanically regressive as Mania released under Sega's publishing in the future, I don't think that it would be met with as warm a welcome as Mania is getting right now. I predict that if a Mania 2 gets made, it will get marginally lower scores than Mania, because, again, Freedom Planet exists.
Steeb?
Oh.